specifically to student accommodation in Galway, and where is the national strategy? And I ask that in the context of a city where a recent survey said that almost a fifth of students at University Galway are living with family members or in emergency accommodation. That was of those surveyed, which represented 8.5% of the student population. About 12% of respondents reported living with family, while 5% said they were living in temporary or emergency accommodation.
Yes, thank you, Kathleen. Just to mention, I had the pleasure of visiting University College Galway just last week. I met with the chair, the president, and indeed the Students' Union, and we had a good discussion on this and many other matters. I also admired the fine quadrangle and saw some of the really strong research for the quadrangle out on the quad out on the campus, and I've had the opportunity to inspect some of the research projects that were ongoing around the campus as well. So a really worthwhile visit and really good work being done there, just to maybe put that on record at the outset. In terms of the student accommodation provision and access is a central concern. Access and support, so make sure the students can avail of higher level education and that they can do so in a way that does not involve long commutes or that does not involve cramped accommodation, etc. That is something that will be an enabler to them, and that is a barrier to many students, and I'm very aware of that. The cost of accommodation and then the availability of it if they can get it in the first place. So I do have a focus on delivering targeted and effective interventions, promoting equitable access to higher education across the country, and addressing those challenges that prevent students from progressing to or onwards through third level education because of those challenges. So there's 4 tools being deployed at the moment to address student accommodation. The development of a standardised design approach to improve efficiency and reduce costs. That's something that my department is working on. I hope to publish that this summer, which will have a standard design akin to the second level school programme, where we have standard design approaches. The use of enhanced supply and demand data to inform planning and investment decisions, so we can see different patterns in different regions. The technological sector student accommodation programme to support reasonably balanced institution-specific delivery models. That's underway as well as a separate programme. And then the National Student Accommodation Survey to capture the lived experiences and needs of students around the country. So we might well guess some of the issues, we might well hear from our constituents or from representations that are made to us by different bodies, but that survey will have, I suppose, an empirical analysis that will better inform demands in this area and where the pressure zones are and what needs to be applied in different areas. So we'll continue to work with the universities, with the higher education institutions, and I do intend to publish that student accommodation strategy later this year.
Minister. Deputy.
The strategy will be published later this year. Yes. Okay. And I welcome the standardised design. I think that's very practical, and that's been done all over England and at great cost savings. But let's go back to Galway, and we have 19,000 students in what I call the NUIG still. Then we've ATU. We've over 40,000 students in Galway, just in 2 third-level institutions. And we have a system that's now saying to I know you don't like the vulture funds, so I'll use investment funds. You've given a carte blanche to the investment funds to come in, build student accommodation with all the tax relief anywhere they like. And so what we're having here is, I come from a university city, and we built up a relationship between town and gown and the importance of the universities to Galway. Now you're coming in, building 7 stories, 6 stories, 9 stories, absolutely just because there's money to be made, regardless of the area, regardless of residents' feelings. And it's, as I said, I'm going to repeat, a carte blanche to the investment funds to build exactly what they want, where they want, while we're waiting for the standardised design.
Thank you, Deputy. Minister.
I think we're probably veering into questions for the Minister for Housing rather than myself. I'm not aware of the 7-storey buildings, etc. that you're talking about. But what I will say is there are 1,891 purpose-built student accommodation beds on campus in the University of Galway already. The latest figures do tell us that the university is oversubscribed, however. They receive more applications per bed than there are beds available. Now, there were additional accommodation beds provided just last year. At Dunlin Village, you'd probably be familiar with that, Deputy, I imagine, 674 new purpose-built student accommodation beds. Also on Queen Street, 300 new beds are being developed. And the most recent data as of last month tells me that the 1,739 new purpose-built student accommodation beds have been built in Galway in the recent past. So there are beds being provided, student accommodation being provided. I want to see more of it. I want to see as much of it as can be introduced to the system through public and private channels, so that we have a good supply of accommodation to students and good choice available, and that we meet that very evident demand. There are also, it's worth noting, 71 beds being advertised as of this week on the rent-a-room scheme. So digs accommodation is still a very popular option that many take up on.
Minister.
And there are currently 71 beds available in Galway today. So.
Thank you. Deputy.
I'm not straying into Minister for Housing. I'm actually putting in a context in a city council, in a city where we have a massive housing crisis. Massive. I don't exaggerate. People waiting 20 years on a waiting list. We jump for joy when someone gets a house after 15 years. That's the context. And then on top of that, we have two universities, a disaster of a decision years ago when we had, before it was the ATU, and the Corrib Great Southern should have been bought by the government, would have solved half the problems. It wasn't, of course. It was sold on to a bidder with lots of money and then left vacant. So the problems have been created, not just by the universities, and I put blame on them, but by government policy. And now we have investment funds coming in. It's absolutely unusual that all of these residents would stand together. I'm counting at least 9 residents' association who are extremely upset. I don't want to find myself in a position of anti-student accommodation. I've cried out for student accommodation, but on campus, on state provided, so that the prices come down, not for profit investment funds that during the summer will be used for other purposes, with little regard for residents in the area. Garmag.
Minister.
Yeah, thank you. It's not unusual for student accommodation to be used for other purposes during the summer months. Most of the higher education institutions will do that themselves, and it's part of the challenge in terms of finding a solution that, I want to see the maximum available beds in student accommodation, and I want to see a formula that works first and foremost for the student. Many of the higher education institutions do, however, look to use them as a revenue-raising tool in the summer months, and look, I understand that they're financing their activities through that, but ultimately the focus should be the student first and foremost. You mentioned ATU, Deputy, a couple of times, and just to confirm that ATU Galway are participating in the technological sector student accommodation programme. So there's an overall standardised design that's a work in progress, and there's an overall strategy, but there's already a standalone TU sector student accommodation programme also, and ATU Galway are part of that. So the submissions that are being made at the moment will be any submissions made from the HEIs usually drive particular projects. They come to the HEA for approval and to my department, and those are considered, and any submissions made will be advanced. And I'm very keen to address this because I'm very conscious that this is a real issue for many students.